Welcome veterans, welcome visitors to Midland, Texas. Woo! All right. So everybody just take a moment right now and just look around. And look around you and look at all the heroes in the room right now. Just look around. And no, I'm not talking about the soldiers, I'm actually talking about the wives right now. I remember, when I was in Baghdad and Fallujah, all my parents and my sister ever wanted is for me to come home safely. And, the families go through so much. So, we thank God that you guys made it back here and you're here to join us this weekend. I want to give you a little bit about my background here. Quick background, thank you for the introduction, is I was a physician and I decided to join the military. This was back in 1995, and I served from 1995 to 2007. I joined the military because it was an opportunity to serve brave soldiers such as yourself. And I want to take a few minutes here to kind of talk about my experiences as a medic and what I learned serving along brave men such as yourself. I'm going to start by talking about my very first patient I saw when we crossed into the border. We were all a little antsy, all a little nervous. It was 3 a.m. our very first night. Most of us had never been in a combat zone. And that's when I saw my very first patient. He was a young soldier. He had his arm across his chest like this, and he was sleeping. It was the middle of the night, and as he slept, his arm fell asleep across his chest here. So he woke up in this kind of groggy state, felt this heavy tingling arm on his chest, and he thought, whose arm is this? Is this someone reaching for my weapon? So he went next to him to try to grab a knife so he could stab that arm that he felt on his chest. Luckily, there was no knife there. What he ended up doing was he pulled his wrist, and he pulled so hard that he dislocated his own shoulder. He pulled his shoulder out of the socket. I never looked at a shoulder dislocation in the same way again. A venous line, that's a very basic emergency room procedure. So when you're injured, you start a line in the vein. Through that, you can give fluids. Through that, you can give medicines. And that was very basic until I had to start one in the middle of a sidewalk with people shooting at you. I never viewed a venous line the same again either. Before my deployment, I looked at a combat boot, and I saw a boot. But now I look at it, and I see a neck brace. Because you can take that boot, you can put the soles against the ears, and you can tie it around their head, and it immobilizes the neck. Never looked at a neck brace and a boot the same way again. A few weeks before I left, they handed me an M16. Now, I know, I've read a lot of your bios here, and we have some hardcore guys in this group, some snipers, some very hardcore guys, but for me, this was a very new experience. I was immersed in medical textbooks up until then, and they handed me this M16, and they said, "Doc, we need you to qualify on this. You are now 1st Cav, 1-5 Cav, HUA, you're infantry." And I looked at this, and I said, "You want me to do what?" I'd never really held a weapon before, at least not since, Nintendo Duck Hunt, so it'd been a while. And it's kind of ironic that I'm speaking at an event that's a hunting event, because if you haven't seen anything scary before, it's a doctor with a weapon. It's like the scariest thing ever. But I finally qualified after accidentally shooting a few birds out of the sky. So my perspective definitely changed. I looked differently at a dislocated shoulder. I looked differently at a vein. I looked differently at a neck brace. I looked differently at a boot. I looked differently at an M16, because I never knew till my deployment you could take that M16, you could tie it against a leg, and it would immobilize the leg. It functions like a splint. My perspective totally changed. Before my deployment, when I saw an amputated leg, I saw blood. I saw pain. I saw tears. I saw loss of functionality. I saw the need for a tourniquet. But now, after my deployment, that perspective too has changed. Now I look at an amputated leg, and I see hope. Do we have a Master Sergeant Timothy Thompson here? Can you raise his hand? Can you please stand? This hero right here, he is the 5th generation of military in his family. Before this bold Master Sergeant, who's done multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, before he braved the desert plains of Afghanistan, before the toppling of the statue of a dictator in the streets of Baghdad, before his father struggled through the jungles of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, before his grandfather endured concentration camps, nuclear bombs, and the bombing of a harbor on a Sunday morning during World War II, before his great-grandfather struggled through trenches and noxious poisonous gases, before brother was pit against brother, North versus South, in the Civil War, before that, there stood a tattered, frostbitten Continental soldier in Yorktown. And that soldier, he had hope. As he lay dying in Valley Forge from his amputated leg, plagued with frostbite, he had hope that one day that injury would not mean the end of life. He could only hope for hospitals, which did not exist before the Revolutionary War. He could only hope for blood transfusions. Penicillin wasn't even a dream then. Air evacuation, impossible. The airplane hadn't even been invented. But he had hoped for those creations and medical advancements so that he could survive and his children could survive. He hoped that he could meet Specialist Myers. Specialist Myers was one of my medics. He was shot in the back one day during duty, and the bullet went through his back and exited his abdomen. He lay on the sidewalk. He was bleeding out. And he ended up receiving medical care, receiving 48 units of blood in theater. And he made it back to the United States alive. But Specialist Myers, he never met that soldier who died in the Civil War, after whom we learned that we need to start hospitals. He never met that casualty of World War I, from which we learned about blood transfusions. He never met the casualty of World War II, who had an infected leg, and then we learned about penicillin. He never saw the victims of Korean War, after which we learned about air evacuation. And in the Vietnam War, we learned about trauma care. In every single war, mortality was decreased. More patients survived because of the sacrifice of the soldiers who were wounded in the war prior. And this isn't just the military I'm talking about. Even in the civilian world, these medical advancements came through. And more people are surviving because of their sacrifice. It took thousands and thousands of people to save Specialist Myers. And it's not just the medics. It took the person who carried the stretcher. It took the person who flew the helicopter. It took the person who filled the fuel on that helicopter. And none of those roles are any less important. Those people are the unsung heroes. And now, today, under this roof, you guys are the unsung heroes. Just as Master Sergeant Timothy Thompson, just as he received better medical care because of the sacrifices of his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, his great-great-grandfather, I rest assured knowing that my children, his children, our children, will receive better medical care because of the sacrifice of the wounded in this room. People will tell you throughout your life that you've served, but you've served in ways that you don't even realize. Together, our perspectives have changed. I look differently at a dislocated shoulder, at a venous line, at a neck brace, at an M16 rifle. I look differently at an amputated leg now. I view it as hope. I view it as hope because I know that that patient can survive. That Valley Forge soldier who did not get a chance at life because he died from the injuries that many of us have here today. But you guys still have a chance at life and still have an opportunity to change history. You have already changed history. We have a Staff Sergeant Thomas Trotter here. Can you please stand and remain standing? He is not a casualty of the AK-47 round that pierced his left tricep, but he will never meet the soldier centuries ago who gave his life so we could learn from him and save Staff Sergeant Thomas Trotter. And generations later, what we learned from you, we will be able to save more lives in the future, and they will never meet you. He is an unsung hero. Sergeant Derek Smith. Is there a Sergeant Derek Smith? Sergeant Derek Smith can live without a right kidney because of heroes prior who could not. Sergeant First Class Joseph Smith can be flown from Longstuhl, Germany with shrapnel impaled in his skull and be here with us today. In the Korean War, if you were an amputee, you were dead. It was a death sentence, guaranteed. But no longer. Sergeant Bobby Lee Lysek, here with us today, despite an amputated left leg. Plus, like me, you were first Cav. So, I think I'm enjoying Midland a lot better than Solder City right now. Yeah. But he is not the Valley Forge soldier or the Korean War soldier who died from his amputation. He's very much here with us today. And he will change history one day. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at hope. Marine hero Sam Marley. Third-degree burns, here today. Hope. Sergeant First Class John Patterson, shot twice in each leg. Alive. Hope. Shrapnel in the body of Sergeant Kyle Kelly. Here today, hope. Would all of the injured veterans here please stand? Would their wives, their family members, please stand? The wives and family members, we salute you too for your sacrifices. Each and every one of you have taught us something that will help the next generation of soldiers and civilians. That is your role in history. The stories go on. The stories are still being woven, even this weekend. We've journeyed in history from the muskets of prior wars to under this roof today. And one day, this generation of servicemen and servicewomen, they will step out of their uniform. God willing, they will grow old. And one day, their children and their children's children will look back at you for your sacrifice and what you have given to this country. Thank you for everything you have taught us. I salute you. Have a good weekend.